Have you ever had one of those days where things just click? You might be thinking really intensely about needing a new job, maybe, or trying to figure out some complicated personal thing.
Yeah, like wrestling with a problem.
Exactly. And then, boom, completely out of the blue, you run into someone you haven't seen in ages and they give you this tiny piece of advice. Or you just stumble across an article online that lights up the exact path you need.
It feels too perfect, doesn't it? Too perfect to just be random chance.
It feels guided, like something is nudging you along.
Well, that specific feeling, that sense that life isn't just chaotic, but maybe orchestrated somehow, that's really the bedrock concept for the sources we're diving into today.
Okay.
Our material comes mainly from excerpts of the Celestine Prophecy. It tells the story of this mysterious ancient manuscript, supposedly discovered high up in the Peruvian jungles.
Right, I've heard about this. And it's not just some old historical text, is it?
Not according to the story, no. It's positioned as this prophetic guide, a practical manual almost for human spiritual evolution. It apparently lays out 9 steps or insights that map out humanity's destiny.
And there's this whole layer of intrigue around it too, isn't there? Suppression attempts.
That's part of the narrative, yes. Powerful institutions, governments, maybe the church reportedly tried to keep it quiet because, well, its ideas fundamentally challenge this sort of materialistic worldview that dominates, modern life.
So it suggests we're on the verge of something big, a major shift in how we think.
A total cognitive revolution is how it's framed. So our mission today is to really unpack the first 6 of these insights. We want to look at the mechanics of this shift it describes.
Now, where do we start?
We'll trace the path, from that vague feeling of restlessness many people feel.
Yeah, that sense of, is this all there is?
Right. All the way through to understanding the universe as this place defined by energy, by our own intention, and this constant subtle guidance.
And eventually getting into how to clear out our own personal baggage or history so we can actually tap into this universal power source the manuscript talks about.
Exactly. We begin with a really revolutionary idea that our collective awareness is hitting a critical point. It's called the critical mass of coincidence.
Okay, let's get into it. Insight number 1.
So the manuscript is pretty clear that this whole transformation doesn't kick off with some, big public event or anything.
No trumpets or announcements?
No.
Rare.
It starts small, quietly, inside individuals. It begins with what it describes as a profound restlessness spreading through society.
I think pretty much everyone listening can probably relate to that on some level. You might have ticked all the boxes, right? The job, the house, the relationships, everything society says should make you happy.
The standard markers of success.
Yeah, and yet you're maybe doing something totally mundane, like folding laundry or stuck in traffic, and this kind of hollow feeling just bubbles up, a thought hits you like, okay, is this really it? Is this the whole point?
That exact feeling, according to the manuscript, signals the beginning. It's the unconscious alert that the old way, the focus purely on material stuff and security, just isn't feeding us spiritually anymore.
So that restlessness is the cue.
It's the precursor. It sets the stage for the first insight itself, which is when you consciously start noticing that these weird, seemingly random events, the coincidences, the gut feelings, the intuitions, aren't just glitches in the matrix.
They're meaningful.
They're actually guiding forces. The universe is sort of responding to that deeper, unspoken question you have.
Okay, so you stop brushing off that chance meeting as just luck. You start to see it as synchronicity, like meaningful timing.
Exactly. You start recognizing the pattern in what looked like chaos before.
It's like tuning into a different frequency.
And what's really fascinating is that this insight, according to the source, gives a surprisingly specific timeline for this shift in thinking.
Oh, like a prediction.
Yes. It supposedly predicted that the number of people consciously aware of these guiding coincidences would start to increase dramatically in the 6th decade of the 20th century.
The 1960s.
The 1960s, which, lines up pretty intriguingly with the huge counterculture movements, the explosion of interest in Eastern philosophy, personal growth, that whole era.
That's interesting. Why the 60s, though? Why not earlier, say, after the World Wars, when people were already questioning everything?
That's a good question. The manuscript seems to suggest, and we'll get more into this with the second insight, that the old preoccupation, the focus on just surviving and building material comfort, had to reach a certain point first.
Like, we had to achieve a certain level of stability.
Kind of. By the 1960s, Western society had reached a level of material comfort where, for a significant number of people, the comfort itself started to feel, spiritually empty. The basic needs were met, but the deeper questions remained.
So the restlessness had fertile ground.
Precisely. And the prediction continues. It says, this growing awareness keeps building until sometime near the beginning of the following century.
So basically post-2000, our current era.
Right around now. And what's supposed to happen then?
The critical mass.
That's the term the manuscript uses. The idea is that once enough people, this critical mass, start genuinely noticing and questioning this underlying mysterious process in their lives,
A whole culture shifts.
the entire culture becomes ready or maybe open to actually understanding how it works. The later insights, the ones that explain the energy dynamics and intention, they can only really land and be accepted collectively once enough people are already asking the question, what is going on here?
So our collective spiritual evolution hinges on enough of us individually paying attention, on admitting those perfect timing moments aren't just weird coincidences.
That seems to be the implication. But, that's a massive claim. It's easy to dismiss these things. We need some kind of validation, don't we? To feel like this isn't just wishful thinking or some passing new age trend.
Yeah, we need grounding. We need to know this awareness fits into a bigger picture.
Exactly. And that's precisely what the second insight provides. It gives us the context.
Okay, insight 2. Placing ourselves in the longer now. So this is about history.
It is. If the first insight is spotting the synchronicity, the second insight is the historical anchor that stops you from just dismissing it. It says, look, this feeling you have now, this awakening, it makes sense when you see the long sweep of human history.
It frames our current moment within the whole development of civilization.
Right. And the manuscript does this by offering this sweeping 1,000-year overview of Western history. It argues we're basically just waking up from the last dominant way of seeing the world. It paints this picture in 3 big acts, starting about a millennium ago.
Act 1, the medieval world around the year 1000. What was reality like then, according to the manuscript?
Well, reality was defined top-down by the religious authorities, the church. The physical world wasn't the main event. The spiritual realm was primary.
Everything pointed towards the afterlife.
Exactly. Life on Earth was seen fundamentally as a spiritual test, for salvation and humanity. We were literally at the center of God's universe, physically and spiritually. Everything that happened, the weather, illness, death, wasn't random. It was interpreted as direct spiritual cause and effect. The will of God, or maybe the devil.
There was a kind of certainty then, even if it was frightening sometimes.
Absolute certainty, but it was completely filtered through and controlled by the church's interpretation. If your crops failed, you didn't check the soil pH.
You looked for sin, or maybe blamed a witch.
Something like that. The churchmen were the sole interpreters of this spiritually charged reality.
Okay, so a very top-down, spiritually defined world. But that didn't last. The manuscript talks about a breakdown, right? The collapse.
Yes. Between roughly the 14th and 17th centuries, that solid medieval certainty started to seriously crack. The manuscript points to 2 big reasons for this collapse.
So were they?
First, there was an internal crisis within the church itself. Widespread reports and observations of, let's say, improprieties among the clergy, breaking vows, corruption, selling indulgences, that kind of thing. This eroded trust and led directly to things like the Protestant Reformation, which shattered that single central religious authority.
Okay, so internal decay, what was the second factor?
The second was an external shock, a scientific one. Astronomical discoveries, particularly in the 1600s, proving Copernicus and Galileo right the Earth wasn't the center, the sun was.
Wow, that must have been like pulling the rug out from under the entire culture's feet.
Absolutely devastating. Think about it. Your spiritual leaders are looking corrupt or unreliable, and the very structure of the cosmos, the physical stage for God's plan, is fundamentally different from what they'd taught for centuries.
Where do you even turn?
The result, the manuscript says, was this deep, anxious bafflement, a massive loss of certainty. If the church couldn't even get the basic layout of the solar system right, how could anyone trust its interpretation of God's will or morality or anything else?
So a huge void opens up.
A void that needed filling. And out of that anxiety, that need for a reliable way to understand the world, came what the manuscript calls the modern age mandate.
Which is basically the birth of the scientific method.
Exactly. Humanity needed a new system, a dependable, repeatable, secular way to explore this suddenly vast, undefined, non-human-centric universe. We needed to build a new consensus about reality, grounded in observation and evidence, not just faith.
So we sent out the explorers, the scientists, with a mission.
A huge historical mission. Figure out how this universe actually works, and maybe more importantly, figure out what it means that we're here. What's our purpose now?
They were looking for the new meaning, the new spiritual purpose to replace the old medieval one.
Yes, but here's the crucial turn, according to the second insight. That spiritual answer didn't come back right away from the scientists.
Science gave us mechanics, but not necessarily meaning.
Not immediately. Not in a way that offered a clear spiritual purpose for humanity. And into that meaning vacuum, we defaulted to something else. Something logical, maybe, but ultimately, a diversion.
What was that?
The manuscript suggests we collectively adopted a kind of temporary solution. Okay, while we wait for the big answers about God and purpose, why don't we just focus on, well, conquering the earth, making life more comfortable, improving the standard of living.
And that's the birth of what the manuscript calls the secular preoccupation, the 4-century focus on economic growth and physical security.
Precisely. It became the dominant project of Western civilization. Build, conquer nature, create wealth, ensure survival and comfort. And this pursuit became so all-consuming.
We forgot the original question.
We methodically forgot our original question, as the source puts it. The why are we alive?
Yeah.
And what's spiritually happening? Questions got pushed aside. Comfortable survival, tragically, became its own justification, replacing that lost sense of spiritual direction.
Wow. So for 400 years, we've been focused on the how of living, not the why.
That's the argument. And now, finally, that first insight, the growing awareness of coincidences, starting around the 60s and reaching critical mass now, is the sign that we're collectively waking up from that long preoccupation.
We're moving beyond just surviving comfortably and starting to ask those deeper spiritual questions again.
It's the historical context that says, see, your restlessness isn't just you, it's a global shift, an evolutionary step. It validates the feeling.
Okay, so we're awake. We see the limits of the old map. What's next? Where does the manuscript take us?
Well, once we're awake, we need a new map. We need to understand the actual stuff the universe is made of, beyond the old materialistic view. And that brings us straight to insight number 3. We have to talk about energy.
All right, a matter of energy. This sounds like where things get really different from the old way of thinking.
Absolutely. This is where the manuscript shifts from history to, well, a kind of spiritual physics. It claims the world we thought was solid, mechanical, full of separate things. Isn't like that at all.
So what is it then?
The third insight reveals that the physical universe isn't really made of separate bits of matter. Underneath it all, it's comprised of one dynamic, underlying energy. An energy that radiates outward from everything, rocks, trees, animals, us.
Like a universal field.
Exactly. It's the common substance, the fundamental vibration that makes up existence. Think of it less like a collection of objects and more like a shimmering ocean of energy.
Okay, that echoes some ideas in modern physics, like quantum field theory, maybe. But manuscript takes it further, doesn't it?
It does, because the really radical claim of the third insight isn't just that the energy exists, but that it's not passive. It's profoundly malleable to human intention and expectation.
Wait, malleable, meaning we can shape it with our thoughts.
In a way that completely defines our old mechanistic model, yes. The manuscript says our expectation, our focused thought, literally causes our own personal energy field to flow out into the world and affect other energy systems.
Whoa, okay, that's a game changer. We're not just observers in a fixed universe, we're active participants whose minds can actually influence reality.
That's the core idea. Our focus directs energy. But, most of us don't walk around seeing this energy field directly. So how do we start to perceive it? How do we become aware of this shift?
Good question. Does it require special training or something?
The third insight suggests the gateway, the starting point for perceiving this energy, isn't a piece of lab equipment. It's actually a heightened sensitivity to beauty.
Beauty? How does that connect to energy fields?
Our appreciation of beauty is described as being like a barometer. It measures how tuned in we are to perceiving the energy field itself. They're on the same spectrum.
How so?
Well, think about how the sources describe things we find intensely beautiful. A stunning sunset, maybe? Or a really majestic old tree, or even a powerful piece of art. What do they have in common?
They stand out. They feel more vibrant, more present.
Exactly. They display more presence and sharpness of shape and vividness of color. They seem to shine almost, don't they, with this extra quality compared to duller, less engaging things.
Yeah, like they have more life in them.
The manuscript argues that this heightened perception, that feeling of wow, is actually our brain interpreting the increased vibrational energy radiating from that beautiful object or scene. It's the entry point. It's the precursor to eventually being able to perceive the energy field, the aura around everything.
So appreciating beauty isn't just a nice extra. It's actually a way to train our perception, a spiritual practice almost.
It's presented as a fundamental step in waking up to this energy reality. The more you consciously notice and soak in intense beauty, the more you attune your own energy, your own perception to these subtler fields.
Okay, that's fascinating. And the sources mention research backing this up, the Vicente Lodge.
Yes, the Vicente Lodge in Peru. It's described as this place where researchers were actively trying to investigate these manuscript claims, trying to bridge that gap between, spiritual ideas and observable physical effects.
And they ran into a predictable problem, I imagine. Science usually demands skepticism up front.
Right. And that standard scientific skepticism, while incredibly useful for studying, say, rocks or stars, what the source calls obvious phenomena, actually acts as a block when you're trying to perceive something subtle, like an energy field.
You can't see it if you're determined not to believe it exists.
Pretty much. The manuscript is quite explicit. To observe these subtle energy fields, you first have to consciously suspend your disbelief, just for a moment. Bracket the skepticism temporarily, allow the perception to happen, and then you can go back to rigorous analysis and trying to build consensus. But if you start with prove it to me beyond doubt, you might block the very perception you're trying to study.
Interesting. So what happened when they did suspend that skepticism at Vicente? The plant studies sound particularly relevant here.
The plant experiments were apparently quite compelling. They were designed to test if human intention could affect physical growth. And they found that plants that were given not just water and sunlight, but also focused, positive human attention and energy.
They grew better.
They became measurably nutritionally more potent. We're talking significantly higher levels of proteins, vitamins, minerals, compared to control groups that didn't get that focused attention.
Wow. But the really striking part was the intention experiment, wasn't it?
Absolutely. They apparently had researchers who didn't just tend the plants, but who actively mentally asked them to grow stronger, focusing their intention, their energy on the plants. Those plants grew faster and stronger by significant amounts. Measurable physical proof, according to the source, that focused human expectation, or internal energy directed outward, can directly influence the physical world, even the growth rate of plants.
That completely changes our understanding of consciousness, doesn't it? Our thoughts aren't just locked inside our heads. They're like energetic broadcasts affecting the world around us.
We're essentially feeding the world with our attention, our energy, our intention, and it seems to work both ways.
What do you mean?
Well, one of the researchers mentioned, a micronutritionist, Professor Haynes, noted something interesting. People eating these high-energy Vicente plants felt a boost, obviously, from the extra nutrients. But the level of increased strength and vitality they felt seemed to go beyond just the known nutritional content.
Like there was something else.
Yes, as if the heightened vibrational structure of the plants themselves, infused with that positive energy, provided an extra energetic kick when consumed. The energy was transferable.
Okay, so we can influence energy, plants can store it, we can absorb it. How do we get better at perceiving it directly? Seeing the aura, for instance.
The manuscript suggests it takes practice, but that the energy field around people, the aura, can be seen. It's apparently easier during certain lighting conditions, like sunrise or sunset, maybe when someone is silhouetted against the sky.
Are there physical feelings tied to it too?
Definitely. Specific feelings are described as direct indicators of your energy state. That feeling of total lightness and coordination, where your body moves effortlessly, perfectly, that's said to indicate a very high energy state. The kind of feeling people report during peak experiences or deep mystical moments.
Like you're floating almost.
Exactly. And it applies to interactions too. Think about something like sexual attraction.
How does that fit in?
The sources describe attraction as a powerful energy dynamic. When you feel strong attraction, your energy field doesn't just stay put. It apparently starts to swirl about and actually propel out toward the object of the attraction.
Seriously, like it reaches out.
That's the description. There's an example given where one researcher, Marjorie, could sense a change in the protagonist's energy field when he felt attracted to her, and another observer, Sarah, could actually perceive his energy swirling outwards. It suggests our emotional states have visible, tangible effects on our energy fields.
Okay, so the universe is fundamentally energy, it's abundant, and we can interact with it, even perceive it. Which leads to a huge question.
If this energy is everywhere and so abundant.
Yeah, why are humans constantly fighting? Why all the conflict, the competition, the feeling of scarcity and insecurity? Why do we often feel so weak and drained?
That massive contradiction is exactly what the fourth insight tackles head on.
Okay, let's dive into Insight 4, the struggle for power. This must explain the disconnect.
It does. The fourth insight presents a pretty stark explanation for human conflict, it says. Because we humans have been cut off, disconnected from that larger universal energy source for so long, remember the 400-year preoccupation, we feel fundamentally weak, insecure, lacking, empty almost.
That underlying energy deficit.
Exactly. And this pervasive feeling of lack drives us, unconsciously, to try and top up our personal energy levels by taking it from other people, psychologically stealing it.
Whoa. So arguments, power plays, dominance games, they're not really about the issue at hand. They're about energy theft.
That's the radical reframing. This unconscious competition for energy is presented as the hidden root of all human conflict, from petty squabbles to, you could argue, even larger-scale conflicts. We're all scrambling for a finite-seeming resource because we've forgotten how to plug into the infinite one.
How does this energy theft actually work? What's the dynamic?
It's described quite clearly. When one person manages to control or dominate another psychologically, the dominator gets an immediate energy boost. They feel powerful, validated, smarter, more secure. It's like an addictive rush.
But what about the person being dominated?
They pay the price. The manuscript calls it psychic violence. The process literally sucks the vital energy out of those who are being dominated. It leaves them feeling drained, weak, confused, scattered. Often they can't even clearly articulate why they feel so awful after the interaction.
It's like their mental clarity gets stolen along with the energy.
That's a good way to put it. The dominator temporarily absorbs the other person's focus and vitality, leaving the victim without the inner resources, the energy, to think clearly, defend themselves, or hold on to their own perspective. And this happens all the time, often unconsciously, even between people who genuinely care about each other.
Because it's a habit, a survival mechanism we learned when we felt weak.
Exactly. And because it's habitual and unconscious, we develop predictable patterns for how we try to steal energy. This leads to one of the most well-known concepts from the source material, the 4 control dramas.
Right, these are the specific manipulation styles people use.
Yes. The manuscript outlines 4 main strategies, basically falling on a spectrum from aggressive to passive. Recognizing your own default drama and learning to spot them in others is presented as absolutely crucial if you want to break free from this cycle of energy theft.
Okay, let's break them down. We should probably start with the most obvious, the aggressive end of the spectrum, the intimidator.
The intimidator. This is pretty straightforward. They use overt aggression, maybe shouting, threats, anger, physical posturing, sometimes even violence, to force others to pay attention out of fear.
They make you feel small and scared.
Right. The goal is to dominate the interaction immediately, making the other person focus all their energy on anticipating the intimidator's next move, just trying to avoid pain or conflict. That fear-based attention is what feeds the intimidator energy. They're the person who sucks the air out of the room.
Okay. What's next on the aggression scale, but maybe more subtle?
That would be the interrogator. This drama isn't about loud threats, but about persistent critical questioning. Interrogators probe, find fault, criticize, nitpick. They constantly question your motives, your competence, your choices.
They put you on the defensive.
Constantly. They drain your energy by making you doubt yourself, forcing you to justify everything you do or think. You end up spending all your mental energy trying to meet their standards, anticipate their criticisms, and essentially prove your worth to them. That's how they pull your energy. The source mentions the protagonist's father as a classic interrogator, always finding fault with his son's life choices.
Okay, intimidator and interrogator are the aggressive types. Now let's move to the passive end. How do people steal energy passively?
The first passive drama is the aloof. This person controls the dynamic through withdrawal, mystery, and emotional distance.
How does that steal energy? It seems like they're not engaging.
But that's the trick. They withdraw, act vague, seem preoccupied or mysterious, maybe give minimal responses. This forces other people to work hard, to expend energy trying to figure them out. What's wrong? What are they thinking? Are they mad at me?
So others are chasing them, trying to draw them out.
Exactly. The aloof person gets energy by becoming the center of puzzled attention and concern, making others invest their energy into the interaction, while the aloof person risks very little emotionally. The protagonist in the story realizes this is actually his own go-to drama. He told himself he was just being cautious, but really he was passively making others do the energetic work.
Okay, that makes sense. And the final one, the most passive.
That's the poor me. This is arguably the most passive but incredibly effective trauma. The poor me operates through victimhood and guilt.
Tell me more.
They constantly recount their misfortunes, their problems, their illnesses. They subtly or not so subtly imply that others are somehow responsible for their suffering, or at least obligated to help. They make you feel guilty if you don't show enough sympathy or if your life seems better than theirs.
So they pull energy through obligation and guilt.
Precisely. Being around a poor me often feels exhausting because you're constantly fending off implied blame or feeling pressure to fix their problems, which drains your energy through that sense of guilt and responsibility.
It's quite a framework. And the really sobering part is that these aren't character flaws we choose, are they? They're learned behaviors.
Learned survival strategies, often picked up in childhood in response to our parents' own dramas. The manuscript is very clear on this.
How does that work, the family dynamic piece?
It creates cycles. Yeah. For example, parents who are strong interrogators, always critical, demanding perfection, might raise a child who becomes aloof. Why? Because withdrawing and being vague is the safest way for that child to avoid the constant scrutiny and criticism, to protect their small store of energy.
For an intimidator parent.
Might create a poor me child. If direct confrontation is too dangerous, the child learns that playing helpless, appealing to pity, is the only way to get any kind of attention or energy without triggering the parent's aggression.
And these patterns just keep repeating themselves because each drama sort of hooks into a complementary one.
Exactly. An interrogator needs someone to interrogate. An intimidator needs someone to intimidate. A poor me needs someone to feel guilty. And an aloof person needs someone trying to figure them out. The dramas feed each other.
Wow. Okay, so the fourth insight blows the lid off why we fight. It's this desperate, unconscious energy theft. But that just makes the next question even more urgent.
If we're all stealing because we're disconnected and feel weak...
Where's the real supply? Is there an alternative?
Yes. And that brings us perfectly to the fifth insight, the solution.
Okay, insight 5, the message of the mystics. This sounds promising.
It is. The fifth insight is the confirmation. It says, yes, there is an alternative, the alternative source. A much larger universal source of energy, call it divine, cosmic, the universe itself that's always available. It can sustain us completely. It responds to our intentions, and it means we never actually need to steal energy from each other ever again.
This sounds like what mystics and spiritual traditions have been talking about for millennia, doesn't it? Connecting to the divine, to universal consciousness.
Exactly. The manuscript explicitly links this to the experiences described by mystics throughout history. It says, this connection to the universal source is often first glimpsed or experienced most powerfully during profound mystical experiences.
What are those experiences like, according to the manuscript?
They're described with specific physical and emotional characteristics. Feeling suspended, floating. Experiencing total lightness and coordination, where your body feels buoyant and moves perfectly without effort.
That lightness again.
Yes, there's a recurring theme. And emotionally, an overwhelming, powerful sense of unconditional love for everything. A feeling of deep connection, peace, and euphoria. This is the feeling of being fully plugged into that universal supply, achieving a high vibrational state.
Let's go back to that physical lightness. Is it just a metaphor, or does the source suggest a literal change?
The description leans towards literal. The feeling of lightness is linked to the idea that the vibration of the atoms in your body is actually increasing, becoming less dense, more energetic. It's a physiological shift, not just a psychological one. It allows you to transcend normal physical limitations and fatigue because you're drawing energy directly from the infinite source.
And this state anticipates the later insights about transformation.
Very much so. It's a taste of the potential outlined in the 9th insight. But there's another key aspect of this mystical connection mentioned in the 5th insight.
What's that?
The experience of an evolutionary memory. During these high-energy states, a person might receive this incredible, rapid download, a vision or deep knowing of the entire sweep of cosmic evolution.
Like watching the universe unfold.
Exactly. It's described as the ultimate confirmation that the universe isn't random, but a guided, intentional process unfolding towards greater complexity and consciousness. The vision apparently shows matter itself, not as solid stuff, but as energy vibrating at different levels.
Starting simply.
Starting with the simplest, hydrogen, vibrating, then exploding outwards. Then, systematically, evolving into heavier elements. under intense conditions, leaping past carbon to form amino acids, the building blocks of life.
But unstable, right? Needing energy.
Right, which leads to the emergence of life itself, organisms that have to constantly consume other energy, eat, to maintain their more complex, higher vibration.
And then the progression through different life forms.
The vision apparently shows the split into plant life, drawing energy from sun and soil, and animal life, consuming organic matter. It races through the oceans, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. Each new form representing matter, achieving a higher vibrational state, a more complex way of processing energy and consciousness.
With the implication that humans are the current leading edge of that process.
Carrying forward that same evolutionary impulse towards even higher vibration, greater awareness, and evolution now becoming conscious, guided by those coincidences from the first insight.
Okay, so the fifth insight shows us the existence of this incredible universal energy source and gives us a taste of what connection feels like, even revealing the grand evolutionary context. But how do we stay connected? How do we make that mystical state our default reality, not just a fleeting glimpse?
That is the crucial practical question. And it leads directly into the sixth insight, which is possibly the most pivotal and maybe the hardest step.
Insight 6, clearing the past. Why is this one so critical?
Because it addresses the main obstacle. The sixth insight states unequivocally, to achieve a permanent connection to that universal energy source, you absolutely must identify and stop playing out your specific, ingrained control drama.
You have to break the habit of stealing energy.
Completely, because the moment you slip back into your old pattern, manipulating someone with guilt or intimidation or withdrawal or criticism, you instantly sever the connection to the universal source, like flipping a switch off.
So you can have those amazing mystical glimpses, feel that universal love, but you can't live there consistently if you're still running your old unconscious programs, still playing the interrogator with your partner or the poor me with your friends.
Exactly. The connection requires integrity. You can't be plugged into the universal flow while simultaneously trying to siphon energy off someone else. So the work required is deep. You have to excavate the roots of why you feel the need to control others in the first place.
And the manuscript traces this directly back to our childhood, our family.
Directly back to the family origin. It insists that you have to reinterpret your childhood experiences, not just psychologically, but from a spiritual evolutionary perspective. You need to see how your specific control drama developed as a reaction to the dramas being played out by your parents.
This analysis of the family energy dynamic is pretty profound. It's saying our whole strategy for getting energy was forged in how our parents interacted, how they tried to get energy from each other and from us.
Precisely. Think back to the example of the protagonist. He had an interrogator father, focused on achievement, criticism, and possibly a poor me mother, using faith, maybe guilt, to cope with the father's energy.
So the child is caught in the middle.
Caught between these two conflicting demands for his energy and attention, what's the safest strategy? Withdraw. Become aloof. Don't fully engage with either parent's drama. Try to stay neutral, vague. It's a way to conserve his own limited energy in a draining environment. His aloofness wasn't who he was, fundamentally. It was a defense mechanism he developed.
Okay, so understanding how the drama developed is key. But the insight takes it further, doesn't it, to identifying a life mission?
Yes, this is the concept of the evolutionary question. This is brilliant, I think. By clearly seeing the specific energy conflicts your parents were wrestling with, the things they couldn't resolve in their own lives, you identify your own life's work, your unique evolutionary task.
Can you give an example using the protagonist again?
Yeah, sure. If his father represented the drive for secular accomplishment and control, and his mother represented maybe a more passive, perhaps guilt-driven spirituality, their unresolved conflict was how to integrate worldly success with genuine spiritual meaning.
So the child inherits that question.
He inherits the task of resolving it in his own life. His evolutionary question becomes something like, how can I find a path that blends achievement and spiritual connection in a way that's self-enhancing, grounded, but also transcendent, without falling into either my father's critical control or my mother's passive withdrawal?
Wow, that completely reframes childhood difficulties. It's not just damage you have to heal from, it's actually the raw material, the specific blueprint for your soul's purpose, your contribution to evolution.
The trauma defines the mission. And gaining that clarity, understanding your parents' struggle, seeing how your drama was just a reaction, and identifying your core evolutionary question is what finally allows the drama to fall away. You realize you're more than that old pattern.
It loses its unconscious power over you.
Exactly. Once the drama is made conscious and understood in this evolutionary light, You are finally free. Free to consciously choose a different way forward, free to connect permanently to the universal source, and free to let the flow of coincidences guide you reliably.
This sixth insight feels like the real key then. Without clearing the past and understanding your drama, the other insights, like seeing energy or connecting mystically, remain fleeting.
That's exactly how it's presented. Mastering the sixth insight is the non-negotiable prerequisite for reliably engaging with insights 7, 8, and 9. Until this work is done, the connection will flicker, and the guidance will seem sporadic. It's the foundation for everything that follows.
So the journey requires some serious self-reflection and honesty about our ingrained patterns.
Deep honesty. It's about taking responsibility for our own energy dynamics.
Okay, assuming someone has done that work or is actively doing it, they've identified their drama, understood its roots, found their evolutionary question, what happens next? How do they live in this new way?
That brings us into the territory of the later insights, which describe how to consciously navigate life once that connection to the universal source is stable. It's about actively engaging the flow.
Which we'll have to say for another deep dive. We've covered a huge amount of ground today, from that initial restlessness right through to the challenge of clearing our personal history.
We have. Insights 1 through 6 really lay the entire foundation. Recognizing the guidance, understanding the historical context, perceiving the energy, seeing the struggle for power, knowing the alternative source exists, and crucially, doing the work to clear our own blocks.
It paints a picture of life not as a random series of events, but as this guided, purposeful evolutionary journey, all driven by energy and intention.
That's the core message, isn't it? That reality is far more dynamic, interactive, and spiritually meaningful than our old preoccupied view allowed.
So if we were to boil down the most critical takeaway from today's exploration, especially for someone wanting to apply this, it really comes back to that sixth insight, doesn't it?
I absolutely think so. That challenge of facing and neutralizing your personal control drama. Because as the manuscript insists, that universal energy, that guidance, it's always there, ready to flow. But we are the ones who disconnect ourselves every time we fall back into those old, unconscious patterns of trying to control or steal energy from others.
The work isn't out there trying to find the energy. It's in here, cleaning up our own act, our own history.
It starts with self-awareness and taking responsibility for how we interact, especially with the people closest to us. That's where the dramas play out most intensely.
It really shifts the focus from trying to change the world to changing ourselves first, knowing that will ripple outwards if enough people reach that state of clear connection.
That's when the critical mass shifts the whole culture, according to the theory. It begins with individual commitment to personal evolution.
Okay, so perhaps a final thought, a provocative question for you listening. The insights suggest the whole culture changes when enough individuals focus on their own evolution. So, what if you committed, starting right now, to actively looking for your next guiding coincidence? And what if you consciously chose to give energy, genuine appreciation, focusing on the best in people instead of falling into criticism or withdrawal?
How quickly could your immediate world start to transform? What subtle messages, what guiding intuitions might surface for you tomorrow now that you're looking for them?
Be vigilant, maybe. For those signs, the manuscript highlights that unexpected, intense eye contact with a stranger, that sudden feeling of heightened beauty in nature, that sense of rightness, of being exactly where you need to be.
Because if this manuscript holds truth, those aren't just random occurrences. They're whispers from the universe, guideposts on your own unique spiritual path.
A path that, according to these insights, leads towards a destiny far grander than we might imagine.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the final stretch of the ancient Peruvian manuscript, really looking at how the spiritual evolution plays out.
That's right. Last time we covered those foundational first 6 insights. Just a quick reminder, life having this flow of coincidences, waking up from, just focusing on material stuff, the universe as energy.
Right, and how human conflict is basically this unconscious scramble for energy.
Exactly, and how we need to sort of clear our own baggage, our control dramas, and connect directly to that universal source. Insights 1 through 6 set that stage.
Okay, so if that was the groundwork, today we're getting into the how, we're unpacking the final insights 7, 8, and 9, how we consciously engage with this energy flow, how we relate to each other differently.
A whole new interpersonal ethic, really.
Yeah, and where this whole shift potentially takes us as a culture. This is where it gets very practical, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It moves from just noticing things to actively participating. Conscious evolution, as the manuscript calls it.
All right, let's dive into Insight 7 then, engaging the flow. So we've done the inner work, right? We've cleared those old patterns, connected to the energy, maybe had those moments of real clarity, that euphoria.
Right? That experience on the ridge described in the source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But how do we stay there? How do we make that high vibration stick in everyday life with all its distractions?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maintenance is everything. And Insight 7 says it hinges on cultivating intuition. It suggests that once you let go of those old controlling thoughts, the ones always trying to manipulate outcomes.
A mental chatter.
Precisely. Then new thoughts start to bubble up from what it calls a higher part of yourself. These are the intuitions. And they feel different, calmer, clearer, not pushy like the old anxious thoughts. They guide you.
So it's not just random flashes of insight. The manuscript lays out a kind of process.
It does, yeah. A 4-step thing, basically. First, you've got to keep your energy up, stay connected, stay in that state of love or appreciation as much as possible.
Okay, energy first.
Second, keep your main life question in mind. You know, the big underlying theme you're working on, often stemming from your upbringing. Third, focus down on the immediate smaller questions, like what's the very next step I need to take right now?
And fourth.
Observe. Watch for the answers that come through those quiet intuitions and, crucially, through the coincidences that follow. It turns daily life into, well, a guided journey.
Okay, but here's a big hurdle. Fear. Fear just tanks your energy, right?
Yeah.
Kills the vibe instantly. Insight 7 is really specific about handling those fear images that pop up when we try something new.
Oh, absolutely critical. The instruction is blunt. You must stop fear images the second they appear. Don't entertain them. Don't follow the scary movie in your head.
Why? What's the mechanism there?
The manuscript argues that letting that fear image run its course physically lowers your energy, your vibration, and that immediately cuts off the flow of intuition. So the instant a negative image arises, you have to consciously, forcefully replace it with a positive one. Visualize the successful outcome instead.
So it's like reprogramming your expectation. If I expect failure, I create the energy for it and block guidance.
That's pretty much it. By actively choosing the positive image, you train your mind, your whole being really, to receive only positive, high-energy intuitions. And then, importantly, when a positive intuition does come, an idea, an urge to go somewhere, call someone, you act on it. That's how you start consciously steering things.
Okay, that makes sense for individual practice. But so much of this seems to rely on interactions, on information we get from others. How does this high vibration state translate when we deal with people who are maybe still stuck in those energy competitions? Which brings us neatly to relationships, I guess.
It leads us straight into Insight 8, the interpersonal ethic. Because, yeah, we're social beings. The answers we need often do come through other people, but we constantly trip over our own energy games.
Let's get specific about those games. The manuscript names 4 control dramas we use to steal energy without realizing it. This feels like one of the most practical takeaways.
Definitely. And we all tend to have a dominant one, usually developed in childhood. First, there's the intimidator. Pretty straightforward, uses aggression, threats, makes others feel scared, forcing them to pay attention and give up energy.
Loud and demanding. Got it. What's next?
The interrogator. This one's often more subtle, maybe even feels intellectual. They constantly question, criticize, find fault. Are you sure about that? Why did you do it that way? They make you doubt yourself, and in defending yourself, you pour energy into them.
Ugh, yeah, that sounds draining.
Okay.
Those are the aggressive ones. What about the passive types?
Right. Then you have the aloof. This person withdraws, acts mysterious, maybe a bit detached or preoccupied. They make you do the work, trying to draw them out, figure out what they're thinking or feeling. They pull energy through your curiosity or concern.
Making you chase them, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, the most passive. The poor me. This person constantly talks about how hard their life is, all the terrible things happening to them. They elicit sympathy, guilt maybe, making you focus on their problems and send them energy.
Okay, 4 distinct styles. And the manuscript says they need each other to work. Like an intimidator needs a specific type of person to intimidate.
Exactly. That's the crucial insight. A drama needs its matching drama to complete the energy transaction. An intimidator often seeks out a poor me, who gives energy through submission or fear. An interrogator might need someone defensive, maybe another interrogator for a debate, or a poor me to feel superior to. It's this unconscious pairing that fuels so much conflict.
So the solution, the new ethic proposed in Insight 8, is simply not playing the expected part, like the example with Julia at the river camp.
Precisely. That's a key example. Julia faced an intimidator, but she didn't react with fear, poor me, or counter-aggression. another intimidator. She simply observed and named the dynamic she pointed out he was trying to intimidate. By refusing to play the matching role, his drama just fizzled out. The energy grab failed.
Okay, so step 1 is break the cycle by not playing the counter drama. What's step 2? What do we do instead?
We shift to conscious energy projection. This is the positive side of the ethic. Instead of unconsciously trying to take energy, you consciously give it. You project appreciation, genuine focus, love, basically, onto the other person, especially when they're talking, sharing their perspective.
And the surprising part is, this isn't draining. Giving energy makes you feel better.
That's the mind-bending part, yeah. The manuscript calls it almost hedonistic. The more genuine appreciation and focus you give away, the more universal energy flows back into you. It creates this feeling of lightness, clarity, even euphoria.
Wow, that flips the whole scarcity model of energy on its head. Giving creates abundance for the giver.
Absolutely. And it does something for the other person, too. Receiving that positive energy helps them connect to their own deeper thoughts, to articulate the truth or insight they might hold for you. It creates this upward spiral, a conscious conversation where energy flows towards the most resonant ideas, uplifting everyone involved. It's evolution happening through dialogue.
That's a powerful model for interaction. But Insight 8 also includes a pretty stark warning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly about romantic relationships and addiction.
It does. A crucial warning about getting stuck. It talks about that love at first sight, feeling that intense initial connection. The manuscript describes it as initially a powerful, often unconscious exchange of energy. It feels amazing, like a high.
Nice.
But if the people involved start to think that this amazing feeling comes only from the other person, if they become dependent on them for energy instead of the universal source, they essentially cut themselves off. The relationship then inevitably deteriorates into a power struggle because there never seems to be enough energy between them to sustain that initial intensity. They start subtly using their control dramas on each other.
And the root of that dependency is internal. Something about balancing energies within ourselves.
Yes, exactly. It touches on needing to integrate your own inner opposite-sex energy. Not literally male-female, but balancing those traditionally masculine and feminine qualities, action and intuition, strength and vulnerability, logic and empathy within yourself. The goal is to feel whole and energized when you're completely alone, connected to the universal source directly.
So you bring wholeness to the relationship rather than seeking it from the relationship.
Precisely. Then two whole people can come together to create something even greater, a super person dynamic, without the desperate attachment and the energy games.
Okay, so mastering energy flow personally through intuition, that's 7, and interpersonally through conscious giving, that's 8. Where does this lead collectively? What happens when enough people are doing this? That brings us to Insight 9.
Insight 9, the emerging culture. This is the big picture, the culmination. What does human society look like when a critical mass of people are living these principles?
And it sounds, well, radically different from anything we know now. Almost utopian, maybe?
It's certainly a profound transformation. Environmentally, for instance, there's a shift in perception. People start seeing nature mountains, forests, not just as resources to be used, but as sacred spaces, temples of great power, radiating energy. And this leads to a prediction that, well, is quite startling.
Which is?
That the human population will voluntarily decrease, not through disaster, but conscious choice, to allow the planet, especially forests, to mature and regenerate, building up the Earth's energy field, a complete reversal of exploiting the planet.
Wow, okay. And what about the economy? If people aren't focused on material security and resource competition anymore, what happens to work and money?
The old economic drivers just fade away. Material production, the manuscript suggests, becomes highly automated, almost like a utility, easily meeting basic needs without the struggle. Scarcity is no longer the core problem.
So what do people do all day?
The new work becomes engaging in this constant exchange of information and energy, giving and receiving spiritual truth, insights, guidance. That becomes the primary human activity.
And this leads to the spiritual economy concept, which sounds revolutionary. People paying others for spiritual insights.
It flows from that principle of giving we talked about in Insight 8. Remember, what you give comes back multiplied. If someone provides you with a crucial insight, a piece of truth that accelerates your evolution, the feeling of gratitude and the desire to support that flow is so strong, people will naturally, gladly give financial energy money to that person.
So providing valuable spiritual guidance becomes a viable way to support oneself, allowing people to move away from less meaningful work.
That's the idea. It creates a feedback loop where sharing wisdom is valued and supported, accelerating the whole process for everyone. It's an economy based on evolutionary contribution, not material accumulation.
Okay, so we have a transformed relationship with nature, a transforming economy. What's the ultimate destiny for humanity in this picture? Where does this increasing energy and consciousness lead?
It leads to a change in our very being. As individuals and groups raise their energy levels consistently by following the intuitive flow, relating consciously, appreciating beauty, the actual atomic vibration of their physical bodies increases. We literally become lighter, less dense, more purely spiritual.
Lighter. And this culminates in what the manuscript calls conscious crossing over.
Yes. This is the ultimate potential described. Groups of people who reach a certain sustained vibrational frequency simply become invisible to those operating at lower frequencies.
Invisible. Like they disappear.
The manuscript is specific here. It says they don't leave, they feel still right here, but simultaneously lighter. They've effectively shifted into a higher vibrational dimension that coexists with this one, but isn't perceptible from the lower state.
And the manuscript connects this to historical figures or events.
It explicitly points to Christ as demonstrating this path transcending physical death while still on Earth. And it suggests some ancient cultures, perhaps like the Mayans, might have achieved this kind of group transition, explaining their mysterious disappearances.
So the ultimate goal is heaven on earth, achieving a state of being that transcends fear and limitation. Right here.
That's the endpoint described. Abolishing fear, maintaining a high enough collective vibration, and simply shifting into that higher state of existence.
It's quite a journey. From just noticing a funny coincidence to potentially vibrating into another dimension. We've covered a huge amount of ground here.
It's dense, for sure. I think the most immediate thing for anyone listening is just the call to become more conscious. Right now, this isn't just theoretical knowledge. The manuscript insists it has to be lived and shared. It needs to spread person to person. It uses the phrase positive psychological contagion.
And the warning is pretty stark if we don't make this shift.
Yeah, it doesn't pull punches there. If humanity defaults back to the old ways, the power struggles, the fear, exploiting each other, and the manuscript is clear. We won't survive. The choice is quite fundamental.
So as we wrap up, if someone's listened to all this and they're trying to figure out, okay, what's my next step? Which direction should I go? Is there a practical gauge offered by the manuscript?
There is, and it's beautifully simple, actually. The ultimate measure of your alignment, of being on the right path, is your perception of beauty, of luminosity, even iridescence. The manuscript suggests that the places, the ideas, and especially the people who hold the next piece of truth for you will literally appear more vibrant, more attractive, more luminous to your perception.
So a final thought to leave people with.
Yeah, maybe challenge yourself right now. Look around your immediate environment. Think about the people you interact with. Since reflecting on these ideas, what or who has started to seem just a little bit brighter, a little more shiny? That might be where your energy needs to flow next.